2 years ago, I was making $65,000 a year and I had $312 in my checking account. Not because I was bad with money, not because I was reckless. I had a good job, a good salary. On paper, I was doing better than most of my friends, but every month the math just disappeared. Rent, gas, food, a few subscriptions I forgot I had, and by the time payday rolled around again, I was starting from zero. Again, here's the part that scared me. According to Bankrate's 2026 Emergency Savings Report, only 47% of Americans have enough liquid savings or access to funds to cover a $1,000 emergency expense. Less than half. One car repair, one ER visit, one bad month, and for the majority of people, that turns into debt, not a manageable bump in the road. I didn't want to be on the wrong side of that number, so I gave myself one goal: save my first $10,000. Not someday, not when I get a raise. On the exact salary I already had, it took me 14 months, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how. The system, the mistakes, the moment I almost quit, and the one shift in thinking that made the whole thing click. Because here's something I had to learn at 22. How much you make absolutely matters. A $30,000 income and a $150,000 income are not the same reality. But within whatever you make, what you do with it before you even see it matters just as much as the number on your paycheck. Quick question. How many subscriptions do you think you're paying for right now that you forgot about? Go ahead. Guess. I'll wait. If you guessed anything under 3, you might be surprised once you actually check. We'll come back to that. So let's rewind. Before the system, before the $10,000. Let's talk about where I actually started. Because if you're living paycheck to paycheck on a decent salary right now, I need you to know that was me too. At $65,000 a year, my actual take home landed around $4,300 a month after taxes and benefits came out. I want to be upfront. That number is specific to my state and my situation. Yours might be higher or lower depending on where you live, how you're taxed, and what comes out for insurance or retirement contributions. But whatever your number is, the same problem usually applies. I wasn't broke because I didn't earn enough. I was broke because I had no system. I was managing money by feeling, checking my balance and hoping. And hope is not a financial strategy. Here's the idea that changed how I thought about all of this. Say you invest money and it grows at roughly 7% a year on average, which is close to the long-term historical average for the stock market before inflation. Using that assumption, a dollar invested at 25 and left alone until 65 could grow to nearly 4 times what the same dollar would become if you didn't start investing it until 45. That's not a guarantee. Markets don't move in a straight line, and your actual results will depend on what you invest in and when. But the direction is clear. Time in the market does a huge amount of the work for you, so every year you wait is a year that work doesn't get done. That reframed things for me more than being broke did. So I made a decision. I was going to build a system so simple that it worked even on my worst, most impulsive, most I deserve this days, and it started with one number I was almost afraid to calculate. In the next part, I'll show you exactly what that number was, and the first mistake that almost derailed me before I even started. Alright, the number. The one I was almost afraid to calculate. It was this: how much money was actually leaving my account every month on things I couldn't even remember buying. So I did something uncomfortable. I pulled 3 months of bank statements and highlighted every single transaction. Every one. This took me about 45 minutes, and it was one of the more humbling things I've done with my finances. I found a subscription to a meditation app I'd used exactly once to fall asleep during it, ironically. $69.99 a year for a nap. That's the thing about recurring charges. They're built to be forgettable. Even if you don't have that exact subscription, there's a good chance something similar is quietly renewing on your card right now. So step 1 of the system, the 90-day audit. Go through your last 3 months of spending and categorize everything into 3 buckets: needs, wants, and wait, what even is this? That third bucket is where the money is hiding. For me, it added up to $187 a month in subscriptions, forgotten memberships, and app charges. Over a year, that's more than $2,200. Money that was already mine, I just hadn't noticed it leaving. But cutting waste alone doesn't build wealth. It just stops the bleeding. The real shift, the thing that actually got me to $10,000, was step 2. Most people save whatever's left over at the end of the month. The problem, there's rarely anything left over. Spending tends to expand to fill whatever's available. That's not a character flaw, it's just how most of us are wired. So I flipped it. I'm paid twice a month, and the day each paycheck hit, before I saw a single dollar of it, an automatic transfer moved $150 straight into a separate high-yield savings account. Not a regular savings account earning close to nothing. A high-yield one, so my money was actually working while it sat there. $150 twice a month works out to $300 a month automatically before I could touch it. Not some dramatic 50% savings rate you see thrown around online. $300 a month, because a system you'll actually stick to beats a perfect system you abandon in 3 weeks. And here's the part that genuinely kept me going. I watched that account grow every single paycheck, completely separate from my checking account, harder to touch on impulse. There's something almost addictive about watching a number climb when you know you built the system yourself. Real talk. When's the last time you actually watched your savings grow instead of just checking if you're broke? Different feeling, right? Now, I want to be honest with you because a lot of these stories skip the hard part. Automating $150 a paycheck sounds easy to say out loud. It was not easy in real life. 3 months in, my car's transmission failed. Repair cost $1,400. I remember sitting in the driver's seat outside the repair shop, staring at my banking app, doing math in my head, genuinely unsure if this whole plan was about to fall apart before it really started. What I did next, instead of raiding my new savings account, is the decision that ended up making the difference between quitting and actually hitting $10,000. I'll show you exactly what I did in the next part. Here's what I didn't do. I didn't touch the $10,000 savings account. In my system, that money had one job, and covering emergencies wasn't it. Because if I dipped into it every time life happened, I'd never actually hit the goal. I'd just be running in place. Here's what I did instead. I'd already built a second, smaller fund specifically for chaos like this, $500, sitting untouched in its own account. It covered part of the repair. I picked up freelance work over 3 weekends to cover the rest. My $10,000 goal stayed intact. This is how I chose to run it, and it's worth adjusting to fit your own situation. But the core idea holds up well. Keep your emergency fund and your savings goal in separate accounts. When they're combined, every flat tire and every sale becomes an easy excuse to dip into your future. With the system protected, I needed to accelerate it. $150 a paycheck alone was going to take close to 2 years to hit $10,000. I wanted to move faster than that. So this is where a lot of advice says just get a side hustle, like it's a magic button. It's not that simple, and I'm not going to pretend it is. What actually worked was picking one skill I already had. For me, it was basic graphic design and offering it to small local businesses that needed a logo or social graphics, not a full business, not a brand, just $200 to $400 extra some months deposited straight into the savings account, bypassing my checking account entirely. Over the roughly 10 months I kept this up, that side income added up to about $3,000 toward the goal. Routed straight into savings, it never touched my everyday spending, so it never turned into lifestyle upgrades. Invisible money is money you can't accidentally spend. Here's something worth sitting with. Rent, groceries, gas. None of that is waiting for you to feel ready to start saving. The longer you put this off, the more expensive the starting line gets, because prices don't pause while you decide whether budgeting is for you. Also, and I say this with love, check whether you're still paying for that gym membership you've used twice since January. We both know which one I'm talking about. By month 8, something shifted. I wasn't just watching a number grow from my own deposits anymore. The high yield account itself was earning real interest on the growing balance. Not life-changing money, but visible proof that money sitting in the right place works for you. Instead of letting most of it sit in a checking account, earning little or no interest while inflation slowly eroded its purchasing power. That's when this stopped feeling like sacrifice and started feeling like momentum. But I need to tell you about month 11 because this is a part where I almost lost the plot in a single weekend. A friend invited me on a trip, flights, hotel, everything. Roughly $1,800. I was closing in on my goal and staring at a decision that could either set me back several months or prove the system could hold up under pressure. What I chose next is basically the hinge point of this whole story. I didn't cancel the trip, but I didn't touch the savings either. Instead, I did something that felt small at the time but changed how I think about money permanently. I treated the trip like its own separate mini goal. About 6 weeks of side hustle income, redirected, not into savings, not into checking, into its own trip fund. I went. I had a great time. My $10,000 goal never moved. That's when it clicked for me. This was never really about restriction. It was about direction. Every dollar I earned eventually had a job before it hit my account. Savings, emergencies, fun money, bills. Nothing floated around waiting to be spent on impulse because undirected money tends to get spent. Month 14. I checked the account one more time, half expecting to have miscounted somewhere along the way. $10,047. Here's roughly how it broke down. The automatic paycheck transfers contributed about $4,200 over 14 months. Cutting subscriptions and other spending freed up roughly another $2,600. Together, that gave me around $6,800 from my regular income. Then there was the side hustle. Over roughly 10 months, I put about $3,000 of that extra income directly into savings, and the remaining few $100s came from interest earned along the way. The numbers weren't perfectly neat month to month, but the big picture was simple. Regular automated savings, spending I eliminated, extra income, and interest, all working together until the balance crossed $10,000. On a $65,000 salary, no inheritance, no lucky investment, no dramatic lifestyle sacrifice that made me miserable for over a year. Just a handful of decisions repeated on autopilot for 14 months straight. Let's lock these in because this is the part you'll actually use. 1. The 90-day audit. Find the money that's already yours, hiding in forgotten subscriptions and wait, what is this? Charges? 2. Automate the transfer before you ever see the money. Pay yourself first, not last. 3. Keep your emergency fund and your savings goal in separate accounts so one doesn't quietly eat the other. 4. Route extra income directly into savings so it never quietly becomes lifestyle inflation. 5. Put your savings somewhere it can actually earn something, like a high yield account instead of letting it sit and lose ground to inflation. None of this required a six-figure salary. It required a system that didn't rely on willpower because willpower runs out usually right around 11 p.m. on a Friday with a shopping app open. Systems don't get tired. Build the system once and it protects you even on the days you don't feel disciplined at all. Going from $312 in my account to just over $10,000 saved on an ordinary $65,000 salary isn't a special story. It's a repeatable one. If you're starting from close to nothing, you have what you need to start today. Not January 1st, not next paycheck, today. And if you're sitting there thinking, okay, but where do I actually put $10,000 once I have it? Good. Hold that thought because that question is exactly what separates people who stay savers from people who actually build wealth. Because here's the honest truth, saving the $10,000 is the more mechanical part. Once that money exists, you're faced with the real question, real estate or the stock market. Get this decision wrong for your situation and you can lose years of growth without even realizing it. I broke down exactly how these two paths compare, the real numbers, the risks that don't get talked about enough, and which one tends to build wealth faster depending on where you're starting from. In the video right there on your screen, real estate versus stocks. Check it out next because what you do with this money matters just as much as saving it in the first place. I'll see you in that one.